My carefully ordered, desolate world was about to be shattered by a simple request. "Would you mind helping me with something upstairs?" He had no idea the silence in his house was a mirror to my own, or that stepping onto that forbidden second floor would unlock more than just dusty rooms. Here on Hidden Love Stories, we unearth connections that blossom in the most unexpected seasons of life. Sometimes love doesn't shout. It whispers from behind closed doors in shared glances and mended hearts. Today's narrative is one such quiet unfolding. If you've ever found solace where you least expected it, we'd love to hear your thoughts. A subscription and a like help these stories find others who need them. Now let's step into a house filled with unspoken sorrows and the promise of a new dawn. I never thought I'd be cleaning someone else's house at this stage of my life, but after the divorce and the bills piling up faster than my strength could rebuild, pride was a luxury I couldn't afford. I just needed work, steady, quiet, enough to keep the lights on. So when I saw a listing for a housekeeping job in a quiet neighborhood, I took it without a second thought. The house was large, elegant, almost cold in its perfection, the kind of place that makes you feel small. But I needed the income, and I needed the distraction. The owner wasn't what I expected. He answered the door in a plain white shirt, sleeves rolled up, eyes tired but kind. Mid to late 30s, quiet voice, firm handshake. He introduced himself as Thomas. He wasn't rude or arrogant, just distant, as if his mind were always somewhere else. He gave me a brief tour, explaining what he needed done weekly. "Downstairs mostly," he said. "Don't worry about the upstairs. Just keep the living room, kitchen, and study tidy." It felt like there were unspoken rules in the air, but I didn't ask questions. I was just grateful for the opportunity. The first few days passed with little interaction. I came in, did my tasks, and left. He worked from home, always tucked away in his study with a laptop and a mug of black coffee I'd find half-drunk hours later. I started to notice little things: the piano in the corner collecting dust, untouched wine glasses on a shelf, a photo on the hallway wall of a younger Thomas with a woman who smiled like she believed in forever. I never asked. It wasn't my place. But I felt the quiet weight that hung in that house, as if the walls remembered better days. Despite the silence, I never felt unwelcome. He'd nod in appreciation or leave a thank you note on the counter. Once, after I'd organized a chaotic cupboard without being asked, he left a small bouquet of flowers with a note. I noticed. "Thank you." It was unexpected. No one had thanked me like that in a long time. Not since my old life ended. I started arriving a little earlier, taking my time. I'd catch glimpses of him reading on the back patio or lost in thought by the window. There was a sadness in him I recognized, a loneliness that comes not from being alone, but from losing someone and not knowing how to let them go. I saw it in myself too, sometimes in the mirror. One afternoon, he passed me on his way out. "You're doing a great job, Clara," he said, pausing. "I mean it." I smiled, unused to compliments that felt so sincere. He looked like he wanted to say more, but just nodded and left. That small moment stayed with me. At night, I found myself thinking about him, not romantically, at least not then, but in a curious, unsettled way. Who was he really? What happened in that house before I arrived? Why did everything seem frozen? I just kept doing my job, but there was a pull I couldn't ignore. Something about that house felt like a place where healing hadn't yet happened, and something about the way he looked at me, briefly, cautiously, made me feel like maybe he wasn't entirely closed off. I kept things professional. I had to, but being in that house gave me something I hadn't felt in months: purpose. It wasn't just about dusting It was about being seen again, even in the smallest ways, and for someone who'd been invisible in her own life for so long, that meant everything. So I showed up. I worked hard, and I wondered silently what might happen if two people, both quietly broken, kept crossing paths inside a house waiting for change. I didn't know then, but that question would soon find its answer. It started with a simple request. "Would you mind helping me with something upstairs?" Thomas asked one afternoon, his voice softer than usual. I paused. He'd never invited me to the second floor. I hesitated, unsure if it was part of the job or something else. But something in his eyes, tentative, not demanding, made me nod. "Of course," I said. As we walked up the wide staircase, I noticed how different it felt. The upstairs hallway was filled with warm light, family pictures, bookshelves, a faint scent of cedar. It didn't match the coldness downstairs. It felt lived in, real. He led me into a room at the end of the hall. His father's old study, he said, not the one he used for work. This one had character: an old desk, overflowing books, a worn leather chair, a large window overlooking a quiet backyard. Papers were stacked everywhere, old photo albums half open, dust coating nearly every surface. "I've been meaning to organize it for years," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "I just couldn't bring myself to." There was a silence between us, not awkward, but full. I understood. As I began tidying, he joined me, going through papers, occasionally sharing little stories. "That was my father's," he said, holding up a fountain pen. We found a box of old postcards, letters, keepsakes. He smiled at some, sighed at others. I didn't pry, but he offered pieces of his life anyway. His love for classical music, his years working overseas, how he bought the house with someone he thought he'd grow old with. I nodded, listened. No judgment, just two people sorting through memories. From that day on, the upstairs became less off-limits. He'd ask for help with small tasks, reorganizing books, dusting shelves. With each visit, conversation grew, sometimes about weather, sometimes life, occasionally pain. He told me about Ava. She'd been gone 3 years, cancer, swift, cruel. He spoke of her not with bitterness, but with reverence, like someone who had made peace with the loss, but not the silence it left. I found myself opening up too about losing more than a marriage, rebuilding from pieces, how hard it was to be strong when no one was watching. He listened fully, patiently. Slowly, the boundaries, employer and employee, stranger and stranger, began to blur. He started offering tea in the late afternoons. Silences became comfortable. There were smiles, quiet laughter, stories that lingered. One evening, he walked me to the door. "You've brought life back to this place, Clara," he said quietly. I didn't realize how much I needed that. The words stayed with me. It wasn't a love story yet, not with grand gestures. It was gentler. A connection forming in the cracks of our routines, a comfort we didn't name. But there was a shift. The way he looked at me, like he saw not just a housekeeper, but a person he respected, maybe even needed, made me wonder if healing sometimes came disguised as a second chance. Still, I was careful. I was there to work, to rebuild, not to fall for a man whose heart was already broken. But something undeniable was growing between us. Soft, patient, real. Something I wasn't sure I was ready for, but maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what I needed. Does a shared task in a dusty room hold the key to mending two lonely hearts? The most profound connections often begin with the simplest of gestures. If you're finding yourself invested in Clara and Thomas's quiet journey, let us know with a like. Your presence here helps hidden love stories continue to explore these delicate narratives. It was a Thursday evening when everything shifted. The sky had turned gray and rain began tapping against the windows as I was finishing in the kitchen. I reached for my coat when Thomas appeared. "The storm's getting bad," he said. "Would you mind staying for dinner just until it settles down?" I hesitated, but the warmth in his voice made it hard to refuse. I nodded. That night, everything felt quieter, softer. We sat at the small kitchen table, leftover pasta, a bottle of wine he hadn't opened in years, and easy conversation. He asked me questions he never had before, not about chores, but about me, what I loved, what I missed, what scared me. I answered slowly, honestly. Then I asked about the piano. I'd seen it 100 times, but never heard a note. He smiled, almost sadly, saying he hadn't played since Ava passed. "She used to sit right there," he whispered, pointing to the velvet bench. "She said it made the house feel alive." After dinner, he asked if I'd like to hear something. I nodded. He sat at the piano, touched the keys gently, then began to play. The melody was soft, haunting. I felt a lump in my throat. I didn't expect to cry, but I did, quietly. When he finished, he looked at me, not with pity, but with something deeper, understanding, empathy, a quiet recognition that we were both carrying unnamed weights. That night lingered. I thought about his hands on the piano, the sadness in his smile, the way he looked at me like I wasn't just a shadow. Was I beginning to feel something? And if so, was I betraying my promise to myself to focus on healing, on independence? Then came news. A friend connected me to a position at a real estate firm. Better pay, benefits, stability. Exactly what I'd been looking for. I didn't tell Thomas at first. I'd finish the month, then move on, clean break. But he found out through someone else. That day, he was distant again, his warmth replaced by a politeness that felt like a wall. "Of course," he said when I tried to explain. "You should take it. It's a great opportunity." I nodded, but it hurt. Not the job, but his reaction, as if everything we'd built was undone. The house felt colder again. I wondered if I'd imagined it all, mistaken kindness for interest. Still, part of me wanted him to say something, to ask me to stay, not out of need, but want. But he didn't. We had both built walls for a reason. It just never occurred to me how much it would hurt when his stayed up. I spent that week in quiet reflection. Every room cleaned felt like a goodbye. Even through the silence, a small part of me still hoped the story wasn't over. My final day arrived. I moved through the rooms slowly, memories in every corner. Thomas wasn't around when I arrived. Part of me was relieved. No drawn-out farewells. I left a simple note. "Thank you for everything. I won't forget." I placed the key next to it and walked to the door. Just as I was about to step out, his voice came from behind me. "You were going to leave without saying goodbye?" I turned. He stood there, hair slightly tousled, expression unreadable. He stepped closer. "I should have said something sooner," he said quietly. I didn't want you to stay because of me." My chest tightened. "I'm not leaving because of you," I replied. "I'm leaving because I thought you didn't want me to stay." He let out a long breath. I didn't know how to ask. I've spent so long protecting myself from losing anyone else. I didn't realize I'd already started letting someone in. There it was, the truth, finally in the open. The silence that followed felt full of possibility. He stepped closer. "I don't want you to go," he admitted. "Not unless it's what you really want." I looked at him. "I do want more for myself," I said. "But I also want honesty, real connection, no walls." He nodded slowly. "Then let's build something honest, no pressure, just something real. Together." For the first time in years, I felt seen, not just as a worker, but as a woman, worthy of affection. We didn't embrace right away. We stood there, letting years of pain and fear melt away. I agreed to take the new job, but not leave town, not yet. He offered a beginning. He asked if I'd come back for dinner the next week, just as two people getting to know each other again. I said yes, and that yes felt like the most courageous thing I'd done in years. From there, things unfolded gently. We talked, spent time together, shared simple moments that felt deep. It wasn't rushed or perfect. But it was real. He played piano again. I began painting again. We encouraged each other's growth, held space for hard days, and laughed more than I thought I could. Love, I realized, doesn't always arrive like lightning. Sometimes it tiptoes in when you least expect it, through shared grief, through a dinner on a rainy night. And if you're lucky, it stays, not to fix you, but to walk beside you as you find your way. This wasn't the life I thought I'd have, but somehow, in that unexpected house, I found something far more valuable than a paycheck. I found connection, I found hope, I found the quiet beginnings of love. And this time, I wasn't afraid to let it grow. This tender story of two souls finding solace reminds us that love can bloom in the most unexpected gardens. What are your hopes for Clara and Thomas? Share your thoughts below, and if their journey resonated, please subscribe to Hidden Love Stories and like this video. Your support helps us bring these heartfelt narratives to light. Thank you for being here.